Hello. Welcome back to the next episode of SENSI. Season 2, episode 4, I believe. It's taken me a while to get to this one because of the topic, actually. Today's episode is sensitivity as vulnerability, and I am incredibly excited for this episode. In fact, that might be why I got so tripped up. And I still don't quite know how to express that, like why that is for me. And I have this feeling that I won't be able to accurately get it across, the significance I feel of this. But I just have to let that go and trust. Period. Today's episode is sensitivity as vulnerability. And I guess I'll start by saying that a reason why I feel like this episode is so significant to me is because it feels like the centerpiece of the podcast, of a before and after, of, I don't know, the new beginning. Like, I've talked about the stereotype and what traps us and others' perceptions and our own and our bad habits and our strengths, which I'm only focusing more and more on in this season. And I don't know if it's come across, I'm sure it has with my over-explaining, but I wonder how it's come across in the podcast this far in this season, because I've been really trying to adequately express and clearly express, directly express what divides one state from another, what divides the trapped, stereotypical rupture state from the rapture state, from the new beginning, from the rebirth, from an embodied way of living. And I think that's why this episode means so much to me, because this is what that is to me. To me, that's what sensitivity does for you. It divides one from the other. And I hope that I can elaborate on that well without over-explaining in this episode. So let's do it. Just gotta get to the right place first. Okay, I want that. This is what it is to be a parent of young children. I have to, on a Saturday night, after I get the youngest into bed, I have to sneak away to my work office to be able to get this out, because it's already a week behind because of how intense this felt to me. I don't even want to say intense, because it wasn't intense, but it was very potent. It was very fragrant, if that makes sense. And so I was editing it, and usually when I'm editing it, it goes from something that's impressionistic and more of like an energy type thing into form. The more I read it over and go over, it's like, oh, this goes together, this is repeating, let's merge it, and like the form comes. But this time around, every time I'd go back, it was like, it was just more impression being added, which is great. I love it. But when you're trying to refine and then, give that information, trying to create a framework and then give it to someone else, it's not ideal. So it was driving me crazy, because the more I'd add, I'd look back on it and be like, I get what I'm saying. I see what I'm trying to get across. I see how this is relevant. I know that this feels true, but how does it fit with everything else? It was just, everything was so janky, I guess. And I can't even say what the turning point was. What was it that got me from being like, I can't tighten it up, to it being what it is, which is actually, to share this, one of my shortest notes for an episode. Quite often with episodes from the beginning, within the first couple of episodes of the first season, I realized that the way that I divide the sections into like little segments and like talking points usually works out to be about 4.5 pages long. of a document. And that works well. And I try to aim for that. If it's longer than that, I know I have too many talking points because I know I'm going to ramble anyway. And this episode actually only has 4 pages of notes, which is not like that big of a difference, but it's just notable to me. Like, I've been pretty consistent on getting 4.5 pages of notes. So the fact that it's 4, that I struggled so hard, and it's just like, no, it's nothing. It's just an observation that I had. So let's do this shit. To reiterate, this is the centerpiece because to me, sensitivity is vulnerability. To me, they are the same thing. Last season, I feel like a lot of the titles there was sensitivity as, sensitivity versus, sensitivity and. There was a lot more variation, where this season, if I'm remembering correctly, a lot of them are just sensitivity and. It's just sensitivity in its relationship to things. But this is one of 2 episodes, I think, where it is as. This is sensitivity as vulnerability, because to me, they are the same thing. They are 2 sides of the same coin, just like rupture and rapture. And just like you can't avoid rupture, you can't avoid a state of rupture, you also cannot avoid states of vulnerability either. We are always in a state of vulnerability because life itself is vulnerable. We just have the option to sense it or to not, right? We have the option to tap in or tap out. So I did a talk back in July of this year, in 2025, at a friend's market. And the talk was called Vulnerability and Volition, Taking the Lead in Your Own Life, or Taking the Lead of Your Own Life. And I'll link that in the show notes for you to look at. It's about 20 minutes long, so it's not terribly long, definitely not as long as these episodes, but and in it, I tried to elucidate the relationship that I felt there was between vulnerability and feeling vulnerable and your ability to take action in your own life. Because I found that my ability to know what I want and to go after it and maintain that, to continually go after it consistently without highs and, there's always going to be fluctuations, but without major highs or lows or lack of belief, failing, hiding away, giving up, feeling shame, but then coming, you know what I mean? Without all the drama that we often, like internal turmoil that we often experience about it, comes from getting vulnerable. And to me, it's like the more vulnerable you're willing to get or able to get, the more clear that channel is and the easier it is for you to sustain action and to actually embody integrity and embody your values and make consistent and steady change. I think it comes from vulnerability. So as I like to do, I began with definitions, and I defined vulnerability as the quality or state of being open to the possibility of risk or harm, of rejection or exile, whatever it might be. And it was interesting because when I was actually doing the bit of research that I did before, when I was working on creating this talk, I came to realize I was looking at the etymology of the word vulnerability, or vulnerable perhaps, and I learned that the Latin root of the word literally means wounded or to be wounded. And that really took me by surprise. I did not expect that to be the literal definition, I guess. The meaning, I guess. The literal meaning of that word. And I just find that so incredibly misleading because vulnerability has the capacity to heal wounds just the same. So I expanded the definition to be also, like, sure, it's those things, it's the possibility of risk or harm, but vulnerability is just as much the quality or state of being open to the possibility of understanding and belonging and being seen and being valued for who you are. You know what I mean? That it is just as much all of those things. But I also think it's entirely fitting to shorten that definition so that it's simply vulnerability is a quality or state of being open. Period. because it is none of those experiences. It is the state itself in which all of those experiences are possible. It is where those experiences haven't taken form yet. They're still energy. So I see it as a state where not just change is possible, but the state where change is inevitable. And I think that scares the shit out of us, because you won't leave a place of vulnerability without your perspective altered. And that scares the shit out of us too. People generally only want to be able to open up to that experience in very small doses. We want to crack that door open just long enough to examine something or to process something that isn't going anywhere. And then we want to slam that door closed. Because to us, our experience of this is very much rupture. What we know vulnerability as is rupture. We know it as a wounding. So we know it not just as a state of being open, but a state of breaking open, right? The breaking, emphasis on the breaking. So where form gives us the sense of security, where our forms and our meanings and our beliefs and our ideas hold us, the energy of vulnerability feels very much like a not being held. It feels like a free fall. Our experience of vulnerability is so very often in life, I am vulnerable and I am not met in my vulnerability. So often you are not met. You are missed, you are denied, perhaps mocked. I am vulnerable and I'm not met in my vulnerability. Vulnerable, not met. Vulnerable again, not met again. So we learn, obviously, that it's not safe to be vulnerable. That's the conclusion we draw, right? It's not, we don't see it as a correlation between the two. We see it as causation. Vulnerability is wounded. It means being wounded. Therefore, it is dangerous. It is not safe to be vulnerable. So the natural conclusion from there is to protect ourselves, right? We shut down, we close ourselves off, which makes sense. It makes sense that we'd want to do that. But I think where it becomes so dangerous and devastating, I find it quite devastating, is that we learn this so intimately, so deeply from such a young age, never stops our whole life long, in so many different situations with so many different people, public and personal and private, like it doesn't matter. It becomes, and I don't know how to open anymore. It becomes an I don't know how to access myself anymore, because accessing myself for other people always ended up being a bad thing. No one wanted it. That I have learned that there's no value to it. I think I said something like that in the talk too, but I won't. Just go listen to it. I don't know how to open. I don't know how to access myself anymore. I don't even know that there is anything for me to access. It is just simply a non-concept for us, especially when we learn it so much. From such a young age, we just internalize, oh, nothing is found there. There's nothing of value there. Don't go there. So we literally do not have a concept of ourselves. We have no recollection of what comes before that wounding. We have no recollection. And it is impossible to have self-trust when a person can't even sense themselves. But luckily, as sensitive people, we instinctively know how to remain open. It's actually easier for us. It is easier for us to be there in that open state, that vulnerable state, than it is to leave it. It is easier for us to stay here. So not just to be here or to come here, but to stay here. It is easier for us. We understand these metrics. Even if you don't have the words for them, you understand the metrics that this operates by. And realizing this will be your path to clarity, because once you can recognize that this is legitimate, there are metrics that this operates by, you understand it, you can function and function well in this. Once you realize that it's legitimate, you then can stop working against yourself, which means you will be able to start sensing yourself, or at least sensing yourself more and more and more, which is ideal. Okay. I want you to think about for a moment the environment that anything grows in. because all things require very, very precise conditions to grow under. All things, literally anything that's alive, that's growing, that's moving, that's a part of the life cycle, they are only possible because of very, very, very particular conditions, a very vulnerable state that could be easily trampled over. Even the most impressive or grand and the most resilient things that you can think of only exist because of certain aspects, certain elements of an ecosystem that aligned long enough for it to take root, to grow. What's the word? To proliferate. And then to continue growing, and to be healthy enough to continue living, basically, right? So it's like the moment something begins to grow is the most vulnerable for sure. But even just to stay alive at any point, like you still need, in the big picture, incredibly, incredibly specific conditions that elements, if they change, completely destroy the elements or destroy the ecosystem in which something is even able to exist in. Like, if that isn't vulnerable, what is? You know? Without those vulnerable spaces, states, literally nothing could exist. Nothing could come into being. Vulnerability is everywhere. Things are coming into being all the time. Things are changing nonstop. It is just the natural state of life. And to me, a big part of this experience of vulnerability is a lack of ambivalence. And I want to sit on that because I feel like there's so much to be implied here. I mentioned before, right, that rupture isn't what breaks you, it's ambivalence that breaks you. It's the being pulled in different directions. It's being pulled apart. It's states not aligning. Things not coming together to create something inclusive and whole and encompassing and safe. So when I think of vulnerability and the ability, and I don't know how to see, this is where I mean, like I struggle, like I don't know how to adequately express how full of gratitude I am for vulnerability. There is no ambivalence. Everything is working for the same cause. Because in a vulnerable state, things could so easily be in opposition and undermine, undercut, destroy something. It's so easy. It's easy. It's lame to destroy something. But being vulnerable is so fucking brave and ballsy and tantalizing. What is that saying that people have? It's like, the only one I can think of is like going balls deep. That's all I can think of, but that's not the one that I mean. But the other thing that keeps coming to my mind is never half-ass anything, whole-ass one thing. I don't remember what that quote is off of, but it's that kind of thing, right? There's no ambivalence. There is no thought of self-doubt or lack of self-trust. There's literally that is a non-concept to that state. It constantly thrives. It constantly tries, even in states where it is trampled over or broken down. That doesn't stop the vulnerable states from being. It doesn't stop things from growing in vulnerable states. Like it's unstoppable is how it feels. Despite how delicate or fragile it might seem, it's robust. Like it is entirely viable. Because in that state, there is no ambivalence. It's an open state. It's not half closed. It's not 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It includes everything. I don't know. It's not divergent. It's the opposite of divergent. What's the opposite of convergent? Is that the word? And because of that, there is no opposition. There aren't things working against each other, is how it feels to me. everything is complementary. Because vulnerability is the possibility of all. It contains the possibility of everything. So to me, when I feel vulnerable, when I am vulnerable, when I'm into vulnerability, whatever the fuck however you want to word it, to me there is an immediate sense of capacity. And depending on how you want to view it, it can feel like a internal capacity, like your own capacity. But then other times it feels more like the ultimate capacity, that everything, in a very inclusionary, if that's a word, state, where it's the capacity of all, like you're tapping into the motherboard, is how it feels to me. Where you don't have to struggle to maintain or prove or organize or prioritize anything. Like there's no juggling in this state. To me, in the state of vulnerability, there's only a being held unconditionally. That's how it feels to me. In the talk, when I was discussing the positive experiences that can happen in a state of vulnerability, I think there was about 5 key ones that I had written down, which was to being recognized, being valued, being seen, being loved, belonging. Belonging was a big one. It's the possibility of belonging, and like true, deep belonging. And unconditionally belonging. And to me, I have that experience in vulnerability. So do with that what you will then. So there are some words, but how it feels to me to sit in that state, So I'm trying to conceptualize it here for you with words. And I don't know how it's doing. You tell me. But the sensory experience to me, and I hope this makes sense to people too, is to sit in that power, because that's how it feels to me. It feels like a power source. Yeah, for sure. It feels like placing your hand against water, and you feel that surface tension and that support, like it feels like being supported, this pressure against your hand. That's evenly distributed. Like it's not sharp. It's not digging in. It's not pushing back. It just feels like support, and there's a crispness and a coolness to it. That feeling is how I feel when I'm feeling vulnerable. Again, not the experiences, not the emotions. It's not a state of excitement can come from here. Sadness and betrayal, a feeling of betrayal can come from here. Grief, like literally anything that I could feel, see, imagine, experience can come from here. But it's the state where I'm not being forced to be here because life got loud and aggressive. It's not like I have such grief that I can't escape it, because that's how it feels to me a lot of times. If we're avoiding the experience of being vulnerable, all we're doing is shutting ourselves off to that openness. And then you can't avoid vulnerability because it's life. So the only experiences that you get of it aren't consensual. They're forced upon you, just like I believe it was the first episode of this season I talked about the rupture that you can't escape. Like a rupture that's not going anywhere. You've pushed it away enough. You have no option anymore. Here it is. That is the only experience of vulnerability that we get, because we never actually choose to willingly engage with it. But when you can willingly engage with the state and you're not pushed into it, it's not screaming in your face, right? With the experience of whatever it is that you're going through, but you choose to just go into it in a state of openness. All you feel is that possibility. It just feels like being in touch, just like with that water. You're just in touch. With life. When you choose to engage with vulnerability, you are choosing to be in touch with life as it's happening with the present moment. And it feels endlessly moldable and bendable, but never breakable. You can't break it, and it can't break you, because you are also a result of vulnerability. That's how it feels. It doesn't need your reinforcement, like the forms that you rely on to enact, like you don't need to enact it and believe it and push it on other people. This does not need your reinforcement to be real, to be true, to be as robust as fuck. You can tap out, it's going to be the same. You can try and punch through it, grab it up, destroy it, fall through it, get drenched, drown in it. It will just be. And it's this interesting mixture of a delicate balance, like so delicate, while being entirely fucking shameless at the same time. And this feeling is what meditation feels like to me. It's what vulnerability feels like to me. It's what sensitivity feels like to me. It's what clarity feels like to me. They're all the same to me because they all strip you down to the essentials where I am just in a state of openness because there's nothing getting in the way. There's no forms, there's no blocks, there's no ideas, there's no fears, there's nothing being pushed on me. When I engage, I am shedding concepts is how it feels. I'm shedding frameworks, I'm shedding expectations, I'm shedding everything, and I'm stripped down to the essentials of what being alive is. I am in a state of openness, I am receptive, and from here, I can sense. And I can sense because being vulnerable gives you access to a broader, like a much fucking broader pool of information to pull from, right? And if in the first episode of this season, my favorite definition of energy is formless information. Accessing vulnerability gives you a broader pool of information to pull from. You have unconditional and unbridled and unrestricted access. It's just openness. And because of this openness, there is a lack of pressure. And I think this is like fucking key. There is a lack of pressure where the experience is a lot that we experience. There is a great deal of pressure. It is very condensed energy. There's a lot of fucking ambivalence. We're fighting a lot of different ideas. There is nothing but pressure. But that isn't vulnerability, that is pressure. It's the experiences that are coming up in it. And a lot of times it's because we're turning a blind eye and we're refusing it until we can no longer refuse it. But that's key, the lack of pressure. There is no constriction, there is just openness. And that lack of pressure, that state of that is how you take form back to energy. That is how you interrupt the process of building monuments. You sit back and you don't brace. You don't add pressure. You don't condense. You don't constrict. You don't minimize. You don't dictate. You sit back and you don't fucking brace. You be open. You remain open and you witness the information, the broad pool of information. You witness the pieces independently rather than viewing it through. I wanted to say rose-colored glasses, but that's not that, like, I understand the sentiment, I'm getting at that, but it's not accurate. I'm viewing it more like, rather than looking at it through forms, right? You're not putting that puzzle pieces together based on how you think they should fit, and then deciding what it is. you're looking at them independently. You're not looking at to further a narrative or anything like that, to prove someone else wrong, to, you know, what's the word? Coddle yourself or protect yourself. You look at all things and you feel all things just as they are. And you don't have to do anything with them. You're just perceiving them. Like in any given situation, it's, I'm feeling this in my body. And there's going to be more than one thing that you're feeling in your body. This emotion, these associations are coming up, these images. Maybe I don't know why, but these colors, these words, this voice, my breathing pattern changed like this. I am feeling this toward this person. I now think this, or I'm wondering this about this person. They did that. They also did this. I felt this. I have these images coming to mind. I have these memories. Interesting. I'm feeling the desire to. And it's even an acknowledgement of the tension, because you will brace. There will be bracing, because that is just an instinct to protect ourselves. But it's about not leaning into the bracing, not justifying the bracing, not letting the bracing take the lead. It's witnessing that bracing as an aspect of it and why you're bracing. What is that bracing rearing you up to do? What is it making you pull away from? What is it hoping to protect? Because as you pay attention to all these things, right, not just to intellectualize them, but literally just feel them, they will change. They will start to shift and morph. And that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to go away, but they will change. And that's what you're meant to be a part of. You're meant to be aware of that changing. We're not meant to grab it as it is and say, this is what it is, because this is who I am, and that's who they are. They're meant to change. You want them to change. You want to let them change. It's just about you contemplating, what is this meaning to me? Rather than deciding, this means, this change, the fact that these feelings are changing, the fact that it's intense, this means that I'm flighty, this means that I'm unstable or childish, and then clinging to whatever fucking forms that you have to reinforce a version of you or of them or of events that you can stand. Rather than extending that experience of vulnerability, we brace, which serves the same purpose as a form. If it's left unchecked, we can observe that we're bracing, but when it goes unchecked or when we lean into it, it serves the same purpose as a form, which means it's a block, right? There are forms, again, forms isn't a positive or negative thing. It's what is its use, you know what I mean? So forms can be great for so many reasons, but forms, yes, absolutely serve as blocks at the same time. It serves the same purpose as a form. It is you not letting things pass through you. It's you disallowing and discrediting. It's you saying, no. This isn't that. I will not. This does not mean this. This will not happen. I can't. This isn't. They will not. You know what I mean? It's you deciding and you minimizing. But when we insist on constricting things and constricting our experience rather than expanding and letting it evolve, we get stuck here. We can't get past it. We don't get to finish the experience. They become trapped. We become miserable, ashamed, alone, out of control, out of touch, and weak. As in deprived of energy. All things that describe the stereotype. But where bracing stops, the possibilities that you see expand. And I really want to reiterate that with the definition of vulnerability in mind. Vulnerability is the quality or state of being open. And the previous definitions that I talked about continued on to say that vulnerability was the vulnerability was the quality or state of being open to the possibility to ... And here you are open to the possibilities expanding where bracing stops. And I really feel the need to acknowledge bracing is not to be villainized. It's not even to be, or maybe it's more what I wanted to get across is that bracing is not we can justify bracing. Bracing is justifiable. Bracing is just. It just is. I had a note that I removed from this episode. Let's see if I can remember what it was. Where bracing stops. It's about momentum. There's something about momentum. Because as I get into a little bit later in this episode here, I talk about, well, I already mentioned it, right? Like the talk about vulnerability that I did was about vulnerability and volition. Volition is the motivation to act and move. So bracing is going to happen, and bracing is the pulling back. It's a not moving, not being movable. And how oftentimes this is going to be unavoidable. I'm recalling a couple of the pieces. But once we can acknowledge the bracing, integrate the bracing, that's more what I want to be saying. I don't want to say don't brace, because then you can brace against the bracing, and that's not counterintuitive, but counterproductive. Bracing is going to happen, but when we can acknowledge it, when we can feel it, when we can open to the bracing, when we can allow that in and through us, when we can receive what it's trying to protect us from, when we can maybe at times interrupt it, the way that I had worded it in other notes was it very much the moment where this happens, where you're playing with the bracing and the not bracing, feels a lot like, and this is not a good example, I've never been on a roller coaster. Okay, I have been on a log ride though, which is like not as intense as like roller coasters, but I'm not a person for speed or heights, okay? And being at the top of the log ride, right, as it's teetering over that edge and going down, to me, that's very much that moment of bracing, where like you have to catch your breath, you know what I mean? Like, you know it's coming and you're bracing, but you also like have to admit that it's happening. You have to let it in. It's that moment, or it's the moment of getting a needle. Like, it doesn't matter how many needles I get in my life, I still can't look. And it's still that preparation, right? When they have your arm, or, you know, kind of your shoulder, whatever, your upper arm in their hand, and they're cleaning it, and you know the needle's coming. And because you've had needles before, you know it's fucking fine. You know it's not going to be a big deal. You know it's going to be over quick, and it's probably not actually going to hurt that bad at all. But you still brace. Even though you know better, you still brace. It's that natural impulse. But to me, it's that moment where, like, you know it's coming, you've admitted it, you still brace, but it's like you're holding that bracing. Like, it's not stopping you from letting something happen. So there's nuance here to the bracing as well, right? Because the bracing is instinctual. You're going to pull back. You're going to want to close. You're going to want to shut down. But it's the willingness to hold that state at the same time, right? The possibilities, right? The reality of multiple things at one time. Holding that bracing as you still allow things to happen and you breathe. Because as the other note that I deleted said, you may brace, but at that point it's already in motion. Because you've committed, because you've consented, you've shown up, you've been a part of this thing. You're holding the bracing, you know that you're bracing. You have to live that experience, that rupturing at the same time, but it's not stopping you. You're letting it still remain somewhat moldable, even though you're having to hold like two things at once, if that makes sense. And I think that is such a pivotal moment of life in general, but of admitting vulnerability, of being vulnerable, and in a healthy way, being able to manage it, and manage our inclination to shut down and close off and brace and protect ourselves and not do new, unknown, painful things. You know what I mean? Just being able to integrate multiple things at once and know that in big or small ways in life, things are scary, you're going to brace, but that you can hold multiple things as you brace. You can still let things through as you brace. So maybe it's not realistic to expect no bracing, although I do think there are many times and occasions that we can, and we can definitely work on that. And I think that that is a worthy journey from personal experience. But I very much don't want this to be in any way shaming bracing, because it's so instinctual, and denying it is only gonna make things harder for us. There's something here that I'm trying to get through, and I want to get the words right. Bracing. It's something about the volition, the action. Because we can brace and we can remain open and vulnerable at the same time. It is vulnerable to admit the bracing. It's vulnerable to hold yourself in the bracing. It's vulnerable to hold your fear, to be the fear, to want to shut down, close away, move away, and have that broader, more open state of mind, the higher self, the possibility, and to hold that bracing. You know what I mean? To me, vulnerability isn't smaller by any means. It's so much larger. And like I said earlier, it is just a being held, where we feel like we brace because we're not going to be held. To me, that's just like, I'm sure in some circumstances, but in general, because vulnerability is so ever present in big and small ways at all times, you can allow bracing, you can hold the bracing in a state of vulnerability, because vulnerability makes room for all. Vulnerability includes all, and bracing is okay. Not just okay, but it belongs there too. It is one of the possibilities that comes to be in a vulnerable state. And that doesn't make you weak. And it's not useless, perhaps. I'm still not quite getting bracing is fine, because even as you take that breath and you begin to brace, because you have already consented to it, you are already in motion. So I don't think I'm going to find the words here for this, but to me that this is that delicate moment. Like if I'm talking about the centerpiece, I think this episode is the centerpiece. To me, it means so much to me. It's this experience that's hard to quantify. Like it's hard to grasp. And I think that that's what makes that moment so vulnerable, because it is just possibility. It's holding two things at once, like holding the forms, holding the resistance, holding the bracing, while also committing to the openness and the possibility and getting to the other side of things. Like there's nothing to be said here. I think that's why I can't find the words, because it just is. I'm not done here though. What am I trying to get through right now? Bracing is vulnerable too. That's what comes to me. So even though we brace in an attempt to not be vulnerable or to be invulnerable or to be safe, bracing too is vulnerable. It's so vulnerable. There is no opposition. There is no ambivalence. It's not a bracing it's not a bracing or this. It's not two things clashing. They are not as different as one may think that they are, or the way that we think, the way that we discuss or believe them to be, the way we value them and prioritize them. There is no opposition. They are not opposite. They are complementary too, and they are allowed and should coexist. And it's our ideas about bracing as a weakness in certain circumstances with certain people, the way we paint this bracing, and the way we paint other bracing as invulnerable. It's these stories and the circumstances of something that are bullshit, is all that's coming to me, that they're bullshit. And there is no opposition. Bracing is just a felt experience too. I didn't intend any of this, but I feel like it's getting more to the heart of it, and that maybe in that vulnerable moment, it's easier to meet it and transmute it and come to the other side of that experience when we can hold the possibility and the nuance of things that maybe I was even coming into this episode painting negatively, planning to paint negatively without an intention. I didn't mean to paint it negatively, but I don't think that I was being inclusive enough with it. So coming back to what I said, where bracing stops, the possibilities you see expand, I'm incorrect there. I don't think that that's true at all, because in a more immediate lived sense, bracing can't stop. But the way I was imagining it as I was writing the notes for this is in that meditative, open space where you are cultivating a space to be vulnerable or sensitive, like in my podcast, like in your house meditating. But they're beautiful, and I think that they're such important experiences for you to cultivate, to experience like the fucking most delicious vulnerability, and to see it for itself without the ideas and without the experiences, without the forms, seeing it as the possibility. And it will totally change your perspective on it. So I highly, highly encourage that. But I think that this rant offshoot, I'm not even sure how to word it, but this correction, the way I'm correcting myself, I think that this actually applies way more to day-to-day life when we are living and bracing happens and we don't want to, and we don't have time to sit down and be open. We're in the midst of things. We're running, we're going, we're doing things. Bracing will not stop. Bracing is one of the possibilities. And once we can allow that in, perhaps, our focus can broaden, and then we can see what we see expands. Because so often, right, relying on forms, and we're trying to dictate and say this is that and that's that, and decide and eliminate and discard things that we don't want or we don't think are useful. It's almost like we brace more, we brace more, we brace more. We put up blinders, we put up blinders where we're adding to the armor, we're closing ourselves off. We don't need to. Bracing doesn't have to mean that. That's not what bracing has to be. So it's not where bracing stops, possibilities expand. It's where you notice you're bracing, that possibilities can expand. Because once you can tap in and then sense yourself and sense your experience, which a part of it is bracing, you then can be like, I don't know, it makes it safer in that experience. You see the lived experience, you can acknowledge that puzzle piece and hold it amongst others. I don't know, it's just your experience can expand once you feel into the nuance. And once you can say, like, this is, like the bracing is, this also is, this also is, and allowing it to be too. The more you allow to be, the more possibilities you see. The more that your experience can expand, the more open you can be, if that's making sense. And to me, it is very much a making room for more. So like I said to begin with, very different metrics, right? So even that is looking at bracing with very different metrics. Where form-based living, form-led living, I would say, is very much a dismissing things. It's very much a process of elimination where you're dismissing to try and free up space for things that are truer or more just or more correct or whatever, more of something that is valued. Therefore, you are obligated to prioritize that over other things. And even if you personally feel or value other things more, doesn't matter. You have to discount them in order to behave appropriately, or believe appropriately, or prioritize appropriately, or something like that. Whatever it is for you in your given situation. Where that's just not the metrics that energy-based living works by. Energy-based living is very much a state of inclusion. You know, it's and that too, and that also, and that too, and that, and that. Like I said, making room for more, which includes bracing. I feel like I just opened up some questions for myself. I feel like I need to sit in a state of, like, how I'm imagining it is to sit in a state of vulnerability and to bring up the concept and the feelings associated with bracing and expand my idea of that. Because to me, that's very much, like, that is something I'll do in life. When, for me, meditating, right, you're bringing your focus onto one thing. So I will bring my focus onto bracing in the word and any associations that come up. And I will engage in this open state of vulnerability to see what possibilities come in, what elements come in. What do I think about bracing? What's my history with bracing? How do I view it? What if it was this? And I try to overlap things that to me had no connection before, and then seeing how that brings up new beliefs, new imagery, new feelings in my body, and being able to process and maybe integrate an idea of bracing that's broader and more inclusive and more helpful and more useful. So I went off in a little personal endeavor there. But I hope by me going off, I have shown how this is an experience of vulnerability that isn't done out of obligation or desperation. It's not something that's performed against your better judgment or thrust upon you. It's not something that you have to enter as a last resort. And it's not about sentimentality either. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It's not about being naive or not protecting yourself when you should or something. It is something that's done with grace, perhaps. It's something that can be entered exuberantly because you know that you're safe to do so. And also entered offhandedly as an instinct, because I think it very much is an instinct. But ultimately it's just voluntary. And because I think that can make or break our experience of vulnerability is, are you willing to be vulnerable? Are you willing to consent to that experience? Are you going to be vulnerable voluntarily? Or will you have it thrust upon you and that be the only way that you experience it? And because of that, it's always going to feel like an assault and you'll never get to experience it as a positive. It'll always just be the process of being wounded for you. And that's a damn shame. Because yeah, it can be disarming and it's always raw and it can be fucking brutal, right? Like it'll make sure that you don't take anything for granted. But I also think from this state of openness, life also has so much more flavor. It's so much more fun when you have the opportunity, or when you give yourself the opportunity to experience a vulnerability that's thrilling and tantalizing and creative and can offer solace. I think that's a big thing, right? Like vulnerability can feel so good. It doesn't have to be wounding. It can offer solace. It can bring you solace. So back to the notes. As sensitive people, it is our nature to be vulnerable. It's our nature to be in touch with things. It's our nature to be changed by things, to want to be affected by things. It's our nature to look into the depth of things, to see or want to see the possibility of things. It's our nature to feel, to perceive, and to be receptive to what it is we receive. It's our nature to be curious. contemplate. I think it's also in our nature to validate, right? Just like I said, the energy-based living and being an inclusive state. I think it's in our nature to build and expand on things, not to dismantle. And that's not to say that we can't. I just think it is a natural inclination of ours to validate and then to be moved by all that we sense. And that is how vulnerability is related to your volition, right? It moves you. You are fueled by these states. It's your rightful place. Like, it's not bad that you're moved by them. It's not inappropriate. It's not nonsensical. It's your domain. So of course you should. Of course you will. Your life is best when you allow yourself to be. Because when you are fueled by these states, when you allow yourself to be moved by these things, that motivation that comes as a result of being vulnerable, it makes taking action in your life second nature. So that the natural state of your life is you being an agent of your own life rather than performing agency. And that was my conclusion really in the talk, right? Taking the lead of your own life. I had this pipeline that I put in there where the more vulnerable you are, the deeper you know yourself, the deeper you can sense yourself, hear yourself, be in touch with life. This will naturally give you the motivation and the direction to move, to take action on the truths that you find. And when you are moved to take action, and how did I word it? Something about take action and embody it externally, the result is authenticity. The more comfortable you are with yourself and getting deeper with yourself and witnessing yourself and holding what seem like opposing truths, but never are, they're always complementary, holding all the nuance of what you are or could be or can be or whatever. The more at peace you are with yourself, the more nuanced idea you have of who you are, the easier it is for you to take action because you're not scared of yourself because you know yourself. And when you take action and you embody that truth externally, you are authentic. And when this happens, right, you take action in your own life, you embody it, you're not performing agency, you have taken the lead of your own life. You do what you want, you know what you want, you know how you feel, you know what matters to you, and it comes out of you offhandedly. You just do it because there's no other option. There's no divide. There's no forms blocking you. It's just second nature. It's like word vomit, only it's like vulnerability vomit. You just feel the possibility, you see it take form and it comes out, and you know, you recycle it and it comes out, and you just are in flow with life. To me, like, this is where flow, a state of flow, comes from. It comes from dropping in and opening up and being vulnerable and sensing the possibilities that you see or hear or feel or whatever form it comes to you. And this is the fucking magical place to be. Being vulnerable is fucking magical, because when you are here and you are sitting in this power where you are admitting that you are moldable and that life is also moldable and that it's good, you're safe, it's beautiful, it's not inherently a state of being wounded, fuck that, you are finally where your power is not corrupted. You are in the wellspring. You have successfully taken form back to energy, and you can make use of it again. You can make something new with it. It didn't quite go the way that I thought it would. But it became much more vulnerable, didn't it? Yeah.